Hello, and Happy New Year. Welcome to Pod Catalyst, a podcast dedicated to emerging trends in thought leadership within the communications profession. I'm Peter Finn, Executive Director of the International Association of Business Communicators, or IABC. I recently interviewed David Albritton. David is a U.S. Naval Academy graduate who spent 10 years in the U.S. Navy as both a surface warfare officer and public affairs officer before transitioning to a 20-plus year corporate career where he developed a strong reputation as an inspirational coach, trainer, and mentor. His career includes a variety of senior executive roles in corporate communications, but he later attained the position of president of a business division of a Fortune 25 company. He is the founder and CEO of 1988 Strategies, which specializes in a range of management services that include executive coaching, leadership development, and consulting on business PR and DEI-related issues. In recent developments since recording the interview, really happy to announce that David was appointed to the board of directors for a new company called Embecta, a spinoff of BD, which is a leading global medical technology company. In the second quarter of this year, Embecta will become an independent publicly traded company. And David described this election as an unbelievable honor, and he's hopeful that this will be a catalyst for more career communications professionals to be selected for corporate boards in the future. It was a pleasure to speak with him. I think you'll really enjoy the discussion.
Well, David, thanks so much for speaking with me today. I saw you speak at Plank Center Mentoring Gala, and I just, after seeing it, I wanted to get a chance to interview you and learn a little bit more about your background and also for our members. So I know you've had a really interesting career with a few transitions from being in the Navy to working for Amazon, Web Services, and now you have your own executive coaching business. So I don't know if you could just tell us a little bit about your career and what's been sort of the common thread through your journey and some of your positions.
Well, thanks, Peter. It was, great to be out and about finally, in a somewhat normal capacity like we used to going to events. So it was great to be around old colleagues and friends and just be reconnected. It felt pretty good. But thank you for the opportunity to join the podcast. Pretty excited about it. You described the career, kind of the bookends of it almost. There was a whole lot in between. And it was a fascinating journey. Really enjoyed it. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about a lot of folks and just built some lifelong connections that have, served me well just based on those relationships. So, I started off my career in the U.S. Navy, went to the U.S. Naval Academy, served 10 years as an officer in the Navy, started off on ship as a surface warfare officer. That ship served in Operations Desert Shield, Desert Storm. We were in the Gulf for about 8 months or so. And then switched careers to becoming Navy Public Affairs Officer, was stationed in the Pentagon, and then got to spend about 2.5 years over in London, England as well. And it was a happenstance meeting of Ron Culp in 1997 that transformed my entire career. Started working for him at Sears, and then had a variety of different jobs across multiple industries. Compaq, which became Hewlett Packard, where I was there. I got out of corporate and became VP Communications at United Way of America. Went to Raytheon as Director of Communications, ran comms for all their DC office. I went to ITT Defense, which was the defense business of ITT, was the VP Communications until we spun off to become a publicly traded company called Excelis, was the Chief Communications Officer there, which had been my career goal and aspiration, actually. And so once I checked that box, I thought that was going to be it. That was going to be the pinnacle. But life keeps moving. And, things happen in your career that you just can't anticipate. And Excelis got acquired and the job went away. And tried to find the next trick. And luckily, based on a relationship, I got to go work at General Motors, heading communications for all their global, first for a global engineering organization called Global Product Development, and then got promoted to run all international communications for GM outside the US, which was phenomenal. But then about 3.5 years into that, got promoted inside GM to become the president of General Motors Defense. So their aerospace and defense business as one of their business divisions. And that was something I'd never anticipated. It was a true honor and privilege to step outside of public relations for the first time in my career to become a general manager or chief executive of a business unit. Learned a lot, got to build a great team, and that team's off and running, doing great things. So I'm very proud of that work that we did for a couple of years. I actually left GM to go work for another fascinating company, which was Amazon Web Services. And I was just getting started with that experience when we had the unfortunate circumstance in my family of my daughter getting diagnosed with a form of leukemia last March, and I actually resigned from AWS so that I could really focus on the family and give myself as much flexibility as possible, which has been phenomenal. The thankful thing is my daughter's in remission now. She's living a great life, being a great mom, great career. So that's, the blessing in all of this is that she's doing well, right now, and all of us can support her as we need to. And so that's great. Started my own company last May, 1988 Strategies, 1988 being the year I graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy, which is an important year for me. And it's been a fascinating journey thus far. Got to admit, I goofed off a little bit over the summer. I've got 3 grandkids, and we had the grands a couple of times for 10 days each. So we got to, just to be granddad the whole time, to be pop-up, not working and just, hanging out with the kids was phenomenal. So very much enjoyed that. But now I'm enrolled in Georgetown University's leadership coaching certificate program so I can pursue a professional certification as an executive coach. And so I'll finish that up in late spring and hopefully get my credential as a qualified executive coach early next summer, which will be another goal for me so that I can really jump into the executive coaching profession wholesale and really try to continue to help people as much as I can.
Curious, just to go back to the Naval Academy, what was your focus there? How did you get into communications? Is that something when you went to the Naval Academy, like, I'm looking at a career in communications? How did that all kind of come about?
That all happened by circumstance, actually. So no, my undergrad is in engineering from the Naval Academy, served on the ship, and we were deployed a lot. My ship was gone a lot. And when you're deployed and, you got young family, young daughter, it's just hard being away. And a lot of instability just because you're gone all the time. And I had after that first ship, I'd gone to graduate school for a couple of years out in Monterey, California, Naval Postgraduate School. And when it was time to graduate, the Navy was going to send me back to another ship. And I really didn't want to do that at that particular time, having just come off a ship that was gone a lot. And so I looked to switch into another career in the Navy because I love the Navy. I just didn't want to go back to a ship at that particular time in my life. And I'd known some people to switch their careers to become a Navy public affairs officer. I kind of knew what it was, but I kind of didn't. And so I got to go visit one of my best friends who was working in the Pentagon as a public affairs officer. Got to meet all the leadership, to include the 2-star admiral who was running Navy public affairs at the time, and just developed a liking towards it. And so I put in a request with the Navy to switch my career to become a public affairs officer and got picked up. And so my first duty station was the Pentagon on the Navy news desk, and first worked in plans and policy, then over to the Navy news desk, and just the fire hose was turned on. I mean, there's just, issues daily, across all types of things that are happening around the world. And, it's just fascinating experience. Learned a lot about the trade. Phenomenal people working in Navy public affairs that are still great friends today. Taught me a lot. And that was a catalyst for, the beginning of what became a long career in corporate public relations.
And to kind of build on that, what are some of the lessons that you learned in your naval career that you've brought to your civilian career that are really notable? Some of the things that
I think the biggest one, and I've been asked that question a number of ways a lot of times. I think for me, the most important one was just to develop a fearlessness, right? A lot of times when we operate in environments, particularly corporate environments, people get title struck, right? That's the president, that's the vice president, that's the executive president. And there's a fear factor, fear not in a bad way, but the reticence for people to engage with people at that level, feeling like they can't talk to them, et cetera, et cetera. Now, granted, in the U.S. Navy with the rank hierarchy, of course, the seaman recruit is not talking to the 3-star admiral on any given day on a regular basis. But as a junior officer, as a public affairs officer, you were thrust in front of senior leadership on a regular basis, conducting media interviews, giving advice and counsel about communications related issues and that type of thing. And so you develop just a calmness in your ability to operate with more senior practitioners. And I carried that into my corporate career, and thankfully being able to view myself in a way that I could jump into any situation and feel comfortable and develop that skill set just helped me tremendously. Now, granted, I described a lot of the jobs I've had. Many of those transitions didn't come with its own fear. They didn't come without their own fears, right? Me stepping into this next role and being uncertain and being a little anxious and that type of thing. But that's natural, right? You want to have that little natural anxiety to help push you and try to become the best professional you can be. But to really then step into it, own it, and try to do the best that you can once you get in the role. Remembering that they select you for a reason, right? And many times you get selected for things that because people see things in you that you don't see yourself yet. And I think that's an example. I am that example throughout my entire career.
Yeah, and one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is just as a mentor and what you are telling some of your mentees or people in your network that are maybe early mid-career. Is that one of the core pieces that you talk about with them, is this fearlessness?
Absolutely, that is a core aspect of it. To kind of understand who you are first, what you aspire to do long term, short and long term, but understanding who you need to engage with to get to that, whatever that North Star is for you. You need to develop the ability to engage with people and feel confident in that engagement. And what you don't know, you can learn. And you do that through a variety of ways, through mentorship, through coaching, through engagement with people, through reading, through taking courses and seminars and webinars, or whatever you can to increase your business knowledge, your acumen, just your comfort level with operating in your environment. And becoming fearless, so that you can really step into every situation with confidence and have outstanding performance. When you have outstanding performance, people recognize that, and you tend to get promoted, and new opportunities tend to develop because of that.
It kind of based when you were first starting out your career in communications as a public affairs officer to where we are now. I mean, what have you seen sort of change in terms of being a communications professional, the sort of new skills, and also, maybe looking a couple of years ahead, some things that, again, if someone is sort of just starting out in their career, some things that they need to keep in mind that, you're seeing, sort of in the past and in the future, that the people really need to have front and center.
I was lucky when I was a chief communications officer to be a member and on the board of Arthur Page Society. And back in 2016, they released a report, the new CCO, transforming enterprises in a changing world. That was some very instrumental work that, my peers in Page and others had done. But I really subscribe to that because if you I think about when I came into communications, eons ago, and what our traditional roles and responsibilities were, from executive communications, internal comms, corporate comms, financial comms, events management, community relations, those types of, marketing communications, traditional roles and responsibilities have now transformed into things that communications folks didn't used to have responsibilities for, but now they do. And they touch them tremendously inside their organizations and can influence outcomes and cultures and, other things inside corporations and other organizations as well. If you think about just, kind of leadership on purpose, vision, values, diversity, equity, inclusion, thought leadership, data analysis and measurement, those types of things. Creative content development. There's, reputation management. So a wide variety of kind of newer functions and new responsibilities that we have as communications professionals now, that if your purpose is to become a more senior practitioner over time, there's a lot you need to learn. And the best way to figure that out is to dive in, develop a good cadre of mentors to help coach and guide you, towards that path. But also, outside of, your communications mentorship group, really diving into the business as well, because that will, and having relationships and even mentors on, with the other functional areas of businesses to help you grow and mature so that you can execute on all those newer and traditional types of responsibilities and, have great outcomes because you are a tremendous business partner who is really making a difference inside the organization.
And maybe you have some thoughts on this, but, with our association or, with the PRSA, or, how could we better promote and facilitate mentoring? And it seems like, just with, as you were noting before, the first time we were able to get together, for an award ceremony, so there's been this lack of being able to be face to face, and, we're doing a lot of this through Zoom. But which continues. But if you had some thoughts or insights on, how maybe as an association or just, as a profession, you can better promote and facilitate mentoring, which is such a critical piece of, an advancement in anyone's career. So I don't know if you had any thoughts on that. I know it's kind of a broad question.
No, I think it's a great question. I believe if you make it a cornerstone of everything that we do in the industry, right? We have to develop the next generation of leaders inside communications and public relations industry, period, point blank. We've committed as an industry that we're going to try to make it a more diverse population of folks who have a seat at the leadership table in our industry. How do we make that happen? Mentorship is a huge part of that. So people who see themselves as future leaders can understand and identify with people who are doing that work today. But it's a two-way street. The mentors have to show up and be committed to actually engaging with these folks and having relationships that are enduring and lasting for many years. But the more junior folks have to commit to this as well, and not be fearful, and really dive into it in a way that makes it theirs. They have to own it, right? If I am a mentor, I can't own that relationship. That's my feeling. My personal belief system says that I am more than happy to step up and be your mentor, but I can't own the relationship. I'm not going to be the one that's following up and securing meetings and those types of things. I'm raising my hand to help you, but you got to help me help you. And so as I coach my mentees on how to be effective mentees, that's job number one. If you don't show up and actively and aggressively manage your mentor relationships, shame on you, because you're missing out on key opportunities for growth and learning. And don't be upset if 5 years from now you're in the same role and those around you have moved on. That's what happens if you aren't actively managing your career in that way. And so going back to what you as an organization can do, just make it a core part of every engagement, every communications opportunity to explain the importance of it, and hopefully continue to get more people actively involved on both sides.
And I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about your executive coaching, because that's sort of a new chapter for you. And we've got a lot of our members and folks in our community that own their own businesses. And so I think they're always curious or interested to hear what others are doing and what you've done to build a client base and some best practices for people that are maybe toying with the idea right now of starting their own business and consultancy.
Yeah. Well, in my experience, and I think this is universal, successful businesses are all based 100% on relationships, right? Human engagement. We can have the best technologies, the best brands, the best everything else, but not having tangible core relationships with other human beings to understand value propositions and what's needed and what that client or customer actually needs to be successful going forward, and how me as a consultant can help that person or help that organization. That's what's critical. And so as I've launched my business, it's just reaching back into people that I've known for many years and reintroducing myself in this context, right? They've known me as a public relations executive for many years. And in certain cases, I'm doing some PR consulting work, right? Just because this gray matter in the back of this big head still has some of that, jostling around a little bit. But as a coach, to me, it's just an extension of my commitment to helping others, right? That's what I've done as a mentor. The coaching piece of it, it's a different skill set. And as I'm going through the Georgetown program, I'm learning that as well. And I've gone through some other, ICF certified type coaching trainings as well. But it's a fascinating opportunity to really dive in and help people help themselves and think about those barriers or those things that are holding them back and just getting them out of the way. Because I think about that inside our industry and folks who are contemplating starting their businesses, et cetera. It's diving into the people that finding out how you might be able to help, what they're working on. And then just realizing, a lot of times, people have great intention and opportunity potentially for you to work with them, but the timing might not be right. Right. And just being patient, and it'll come, I believe, over time, if you just, stay on it and continue to develop and foster relationships with those that you know and those that you don't, because people in your network will put you in touch with people in their networks and so on and so on. And out of that, you can create opportunities, I believe. And so it's just staying at it and continuing to kind of understand, look at trends and look at what's needed in the marketplace, and figuring out, based on your experience, your knowledge, your relationships, how you might be able to help and jump in and be a solution provider for those that might need those types of services.
And I was curious too, when you're some of the coaching you've been doing? Is it with folks in communications, or is it just across the board in terms of the executives that you're working with?
Doing some in communications, but doing some in general business as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I enjoy both. But, what I enjoy, about the PR folks is because I have that background. I know the career path and everything else. And so I can be helpful as a coach and be, a traditional coach in that manner, but also step outside. And if they're interested, offer some mentoring support in terms of things to think about, trends to look at, even be a convener, introduce them to people that I have in my network, et cetera. So people have been really appreciating that, just the uniqueness of my background here as I step into coaching. And it's very enjoyable. What I really love about it is just the flexibility it provides me to be wherever I need to be, from family and otherwise, and still support and help people. The advent of Zoom and phones and internet and everything else just makes it easier to engage wherever I am. And so that is a cornerstone of my success so far.
Do you see any themes that have emerged, with your work with executives, and a common set of challenges, or just some things that have been top of mind with some of the people you've worked with?
Yeah, I think one of the common themes thus far is we're all trying to figure out what this new way of working is going to mean for us long term. We're all used to going into the office and having face-to-face relationships and developing deep understanding about what's going on in the business, what's going on with the personal, interpersonal dynamics, those types of things. Now we're engaging through Zoom screens and Google Meet screens and, those types of things. And so the personal dynamic it's okay, but it's not the same as being in person and shaking a hand. So if you think about that for the long term and managing teams and helping people get promoted and your own career development and deepening of relationships, and that's, water cooler chat that you can have as you prepare for a meeting when you're sitting around the table, you can't have now because everybody is coming in as soon as the meeting starts and then you get right at it. So people are worried about that. How does that affect my ability to create deeper relationships, continue to be successful, show up in a way that differentiates myself from others so that I can be considered for promotions, those types of things. So I've had a number of those types of conversations through the coaching sessions, and it is a legitimate concern because this is all different. I think it's helpful that, some companies are actually having minimal or somewhat tethered, if you will, engagements for a lot of people to go back in the office. Again, just feeling like it's normal again for some. But, we'll have to watch this over time just to kind of see, what this means longer term for multiple industries, but, multiple functions as well. I think our ability in communications to be effective has not been as hampered as others, basically, because we have to communicate and share messages and narratives and get people comfortable about the organizations that we're working in. But there's nothing better than being in the room and actually having a live conversation and be able to read somebody's body language and kind of understand if you're resonating or not. So yeah, it's going to be a long-term challenge as this, continues to morph and grow and transform over many years.
One last question for you. We ask everybody what gets you up in the morning.
My family, number one, just came back last night from picking my youngest up. He's a sophomore at Elon University. I'm just thrilled that the 9-year-old still wants to hang out with the old dad, right? And we got to, he goes, Elon, we got to take in an Elon UNC, North Carolina basketball game in Chapel Hill on Saturday. That was one of the bucket list things to go to the basketball game there. So do that with my son was phenomenal. And so it's that, we've got the holidays coming up. I've got 3 grandkids. I can't wait for them to open presents and just have that experience as a granddad. So it's that kind of stuff. I truly value my friendships, my relationships, and I try to stay as engaged as possible. Many of you who may listen to this, I may not have been in touch for a few months, but I'll be getting around to it. And I'm hopeful, if you hear my voice, you'll get in touch with me and just say hello. That's very important. That's what's gotten me through and helped me be successful with all these relationships with people I've known, who I've been able to ask them questions of, and they help me, unequivocally. That's what it's about. That's, I think, who I am, is kind of leveraging what has been done for me and doing it for others. That's what kind of makes me tick.
Thanks so much, David. And this is a pleasure speaking with you, and I'm glad we got a chance to talk. And yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, take care.
Take care.
Thanks again to David for speaking with me. I really enjoyed getting the chance to interview him and just learn more about his career arc and some new things that he's doing. And again, congratulations to him on his appointment to the VECTA board. We'll have more Pod Catalyst episodes as the year progresses. And as always, thanks for listening and Happy New Year.